When San Miguel La Villa opened its hotel in 2019, it had great expectations. Located in the Colombian colonial town called Villa de Leyva, there was optimism that its great location would help sell itself. But it all came crashing down after March 2020.
Aplicaremos un aislamiento preventivo obligatorio para todos los colombianos desde el próximo martes 24 de marzo a las 23:59 horas hasta el lunes 13 de abril a las 0 horas.
En este momento nosotros estamos trabajando con unas tarifas que se llaman tarifas prepandemia. Si antes vendíamos una habitación en 250, ahora vale 125. Tratamos de sobrellevar, de sobresalir, porque pues no somos guerreros, los colombianos somos guerreros, no nos damos por vencidos, y eso estamos tratando de hacer.
The COVID-19 pandemic put emergency brakes on what was Colombia's booming tourism industry. According to the nation's hotel and tourism officials, hotel occupancy in Colombia hardly surpassed 25% at the end of 2020 and plummeted to less than 1% during lockdowns. The hotel sector says they registered more than $2 billion in losses alone that year. This small colonial town is just a 3-hour drive from Bogotá. Many travel writers call Villa de Leyva the perfect day trip or weekend getaway for locals and international visitors alike. The desert scenery in the mountains, paired with a quaint town, makes it for a peace-filled weekend exploring nature, museums, and boutique shops. Lorena Zamudio, manager of the Hotel San Miguel La Villa, says despite government efforts to boost tourism, small entrepreneurs haven't seen results.
El gobierno no ha dicho ni siquiera, oye, yo les voy a enviar una dotación de alcohol, un kit para ustedes. Usted está pagando religiosamente industria y comercio, está pagando todos los servicios, me está pagando a mí mis parafiscales que nosotros sabemos que pues son utilizados para hacer promoción de nuestro país fuera y todas esas cosas. Eso está muy bien, pero nosotros no hemos tenido ni siquiera, te lo voy a decir, una capacitación pie a pie que se pueda decir tuvimos una capacitación para el tema de turismo.
The government has lifted all COVID lockdown restrictions in the hope that this will kickstart Colombia's struggling economy. But at the same time, the virus has picked up strength as contagion levels and death rates in the country have worsened. In July 2021, Colombia became the 10th country in the world to surpass 100,000 deaths. With no clear relief in sight from the mounting illness, receiving tourists brings with it a huge sense of responsibility.
Pero aún así, no me atrevo a hacerlo, no me atrevo a tener los espacios llenos del mismo miedo al coronavirus. Porque no sabemos qué era peor antes, si el que nos secuestraran un turista o ahora que se nos infecte un turista.
Assuring the safety of visitors is a struggle Colombia is all too familiar with.
Sí viví esa época donde nos tocaba esperar si la guerrilla nos daba permiso de viajar en Semana Santa. Ahorita no es la guerrilla, ahorita es el gobierno.
Colombia has lived through more than half a century of armed conflict. When things were at their worst in the 80s and 90s, it was impossible to welcome foreign travelers. Fears of kidnapping, extortions, and stories of violence from guerrillas or narco-traffickers kept many people away from the beautiful landscapes and experiences the country had to offer. Over the past decade before the pandemic, things had turned around. Tourism began to grow, and places like Villa de Leyva were booming. William Buitrago is the owner of Posada San Antonio, a small inn in Villa de Leyva. It is a family-run business open since 2004. With the pandemic, he lost his 2 full-time employees and now only hires 1 person on weekends when tourism picks up. Buitrago says this is no longer about growing a lucrative business. It is about helping families.
Así, cuando a mí me llegan ingresos, yo puedo contratar y puedo ayudar a una familia, porque tú trabajas y tú sostienes una familia.
This is far from what the tourism industry was seeing leading up to the pandemic. In 2019, Forbes listed Colombia as one of the top 10 coolest places to visit. Not only were there record numbers of tourists, but they were also spending more. From 2004 to 2018, income from foreign visitors grew from 4.7 billion US dollars to 20 billion. That is a growth of more than 400%. Money that creates jobs and helps families.
Esto me lo hace una pareja de abuelitos. Ellos se dedican a trabajar esta artesanía allí en este municipio. Esto se llama cestería de rollo. Es trabajada totalmente a mano en fique.
Blanca Marina Duran Igua came from a farming community just outside of Villa de Leyva. Thanks to the work she found in the tourism industry, she received a higher income than her mother could have ever dreamed. This single mother is proud to say that her children have gone on to study after high school. Today, she owns the craft store she used to manage. Colombian crafts and artisanry work like this benefit directly from foreign tourists.
Pero por ejemplo, en mi tienda, como ustedes lo pueden ver, la artesanía la valora más el extranjero que el mismo colombiano. Nosotros todavía no tenemos como esa cultura de valorar lo de su tierra.
Duran is a craftswoman herself, weaving ruanas, Colombia's national poncho worn by farmers living in the Andes Mountains. For her, a dip in tourism numbers means Colombia distances itself from the international market. Artisans are given less of a chance to connect and share their work.
Empieza a tejer, entonces allí uno pues plasma como lo que se concentra en la naturaleza, en los colores del cielo.
Most of the people we speak to in the tourism industry are looking to share their passions. And that is the case for Augusto Duplat when he opened up a restaurant in Villa de Leyva 8 years ago with his wife. The architect and his paleontologist wife created the Chocolate Museum, and that love for the rich dessert in all of its forms grew exponentially into 2 restaurants and a hotel. But he says the tourism crash in 2020 threw Colombia back more than 2 decades.
Pero con algo que le hace daño es la nostalgia. La nostalgia de cuando algo fue bueno y desaparece genera un trauma, una frustración, un bloqueo. La persona no, cuando va a dar un paso, dice, y es que como era antes, ya no hay ese antes, solamente es lo que hay ahora.
The only way out, says Duplat, is finding ways to see things differently.
No, es que el turismo no nos dejaba mejorar los procesos internos, no nos dejaba retroalimentarnos, no nos dejaba hacer adecuaciones de crecimiento. Simplemente era atender y atender y atender y atender y recibir caja y caja y caja y caja. Entonces ahora ¿qué hicimos? Cogimos la gente, el personal, y los pusimos en mantenimiento y en mejoras y en adecuaciones.
The Chocolate Museum downsized by temporarily closing one of its locations. They decided to invest in more training of personnel, and they've been building an actual museum for families to learn about the history of chocolate from around the world. All of this, he says, is an investment towards the future, which he hopes will be different.
Tengo que crecer más, vender a lo que sea. Ahora, en cambio, somos más humanos y eso no lo habíamos podido lograr de ninguna otra manera. Somos ahora mejores personas, mejores clientes, jefes, ¿sí? También, y tenemos mejor vida familiar.
Experts say recuperation will most likely be slow. A study by analysis firm Global Data said flights to South America went down by 50% in 2020. While countries like Chile are closed off to tourists, Colombia is working hard to bring back travelers to the country, lifting travel restrictions and campaigning. One campaign banks on promoting smaller destinations like Villa, outside of major cities, in the hope that the tourism dollars will be more widely dispersed. Slowly, people are making their way back. Officials said the first semester of 2021 registered a 21% recovery of foreign travelers. 420,000 citizens came to visit from countries like the US, Mexico, and Spain.
The food and also the people. I've found that people here are very friendly and very helpful and welcoming. And then also it's beautiful. Both Bogota in the mountains and then Cartagena on the coast. I've gotten to see different terrains in the country, which I've loved.
That in the street, most of the people are wearing masks, while in France people are not following the rules as much as that. So I was very surprised with that. I think there was kind of a trade-off made by the authorities because we can still go to the restaurant and enjoy the restaurant and the food here.
Colombia's tourism ministry also says they want to reinvent the industry coming out of the pandemic. The country has a rich biodiversity that makes it one of a kind. In Villa de Leyva, the outdoor attraction called Pozos Azules or Blue Lakes was a huge hit after the initial COVID lockdowns. Amanda Reyes, the general manager of this park, had never seen anything like it.
Ese fin de semana aproximadamente atendimos unas 4,000 personas, solamente entre sábado y domingo. Es decir, fue una gran cantidad. Después de ese encierro de 5 meses, yo creo que la gente desea salir a visitar un campo así, algo que distraiga de hecho a la familia.
In September of 2020, President Iván Duque initially announced a gradual reopening of national parks, but mid-2021, many were still closed. Hiking trail tour guide Gilberto Ruiz Velázquez says natural parks don't have the correct infrastructure to bring in visitors. That investment, he says, has been lacking for years.
Para poder brindar un servicio de parques nacionales pienso que deben tener más seguridad. O sea, si tú vas a los parques, a la mayoría de parques nacionales en Colombia no tienen la seguridad suficiente, ¿sí? Les faltan muchas cosas. Tanto si tú vas a caminar senderismo, no tienes senderos que estén, por ejemplo, acondicionados con líneas de vida, con, seguridad como tal en todos los aspectos, ¿sí?
Without foreigners, his guided tours in parks around Villa have gone down by more than 80%. The destinations are there, and the potential is great, says Ruiz, making the future limitless.
Pues no sé, realmente que el Estado pusiera más las manos en la gente, en la población. No en hacer crecer el turismo para que viaje, sino en ayudar a su población para que pueda recibirlo seguro.
A population that says they are ready to put their passions and dedications on the line, despite everything that keeps bringing them down. After surviving violence and its stigma, Colombians are ready to build a new reality.
Pero muy lento. Hay una frase que me encanta. Solo llego lejos, pero acompañado llegaría más rápido. Si tengo un apoyo, téngalo por seguro que ganamos todos.
Pues si nosotros miramos la esencia de lo que es una familia colombiana, es una familia muy amorosa, muy cariñosa. Y entonces lo puede ser con el turista, con la naturaleza, con el medio ambiente, consigo mismos. Entonces, en un mundo en donde ya no hay contaminación, gracias al COVID se ha disminuido, se ha valorado mucho el medio ambiente y el planeta, Colombia tiene esa esencia para complementar la nueva realidad.